Good morning. Teresa Spangler here with another episode of Future Forward. And I am thrilled to have with me today Dan Doctoroff, who is the founder and chairman of Target ALS. And with an incredible background, I think you're going to learn quite a bit today. Dan was also served as CEO and president of Bloomberg and was also deputy mayor of New York City for economic development and rebuilding. You've also been founder and chief executive of Sidewalk Labs, an alphabet company that focuses on really addressing big city problems. You have so many innovative things in your background that it's so hard to pick one to even start with, Dan. But I think what I would love to know first is, where did this drive come from that has put you in the position to even do all these wonderful things you've done?
That's a very interesting question. And Teresa, I'm thrilled to be with you. We're brothers and sisters in ALS.
Yeah.
So anything I can do for you, I always will.
It's an important thing to note. You and I came together because I read your story about your ALS journey, and I was just diagnosed this year. And so that has brought us together. And I'm using my voice. Mine's not as big as Dan's, but we're going to use our voices to change this outcomes for ALS people.
I think we are, and we can get into that later. So I never knew where my drive came from until I was about 60 and went to see a therapist for the first time. And because my father and uncle had died of ALS, I was worried about time. And eventually we started talking about ambition. And I started recalling conversations between my mother and father that I wasn't meant to hear. And the conversations were about my mom pushing my father to be more ambitious. And I was like 10, 11, 12, sort of a formative age. And I think I internalized that and didn't want to disappoint my mom the way I perceived my dad did. And by the way, my dad was a pretty successful lawyer and then became the chief judge of the Michigan Court of Appeals. So he was no slouch. But my mom was very ambitious. And so I internalized it. And I think I didn't want to disappoint my mom. Now, by the way, at the point at which I discovered this, my mom had been dead for more than 20 years.
Oh, wow.
And again, the main driver of my motivation, my career success, I didn't ever realize. But then when I did realize it, I realized I was trying to prove something to my mother. I stepped back and said, why am I still trying to please my mother? When I was diagnosed, I knew exactly what I had to do. So I was kind of prepared to step back when I was diagnosed. But I think that was where this drive came from.
Yeah. But you started Target ALS before you were diagnosed, correct?
Oh yeah, I
Yeah,
started in 2013,
yeah,
and um, but that was after my uncle
right.
had just died, and my father had died about 10 years before.
Okay.
And so I believed that it was hereditary
Yeah,
in family. And I thought I had to do something
yeah,
because it obviously was going to affect my brothers, cousins,
yeah,
our children.
right.
So it was deeply, deeply personal. And by the way, I found out that 1 in 400 people suffer from ALS. And so I felt I had to do something, and I had connections.
Yeah,
But what was more important was I realized there had been very little progress up until, you know, 10 years ago or
yeah,
so. And I brought together a small team of scientists to understand why there'd been so little progress. And they developed a set of hypotheses, and we built Target
wow.
ALS to correct those hypotheses, to address those
Yeah,
hypotheses. And I've been incredibly pleased with the results over the last 10 years, but we've got a lot more to do.
yeah. What were some of those potential hypotheses that it hadn't been more had not been able to be accomplished?
Yeah. First, it was the way research was funded. So
Mhm.
it's typically very siloed, and
Uh,
ALS is a very complex
yeah,
disease with multiple pathways, genetic, biological, and and very complicated. The funding was typically not focused on it was typically focused on basic research
mhm,
and translational research, basically getting basic research
right.
into the clinic for
Yeah,
real patients was there was very little funding of it. The funding was typically kind of incestuous
mhm,
in that peer review process
yeah,
that the NIH used uh, typically had big names giving to other big names in the field. So the field was not expanding.
yeah,
Uh, Another hypothesis was that it was very difficult to get new researchers into the field because the basic tools that they needed, like stem cells and
yeah,
animal models and tissue samples, were not typically available because universities had all sorts of complex IP issues. Uh,
right.
and that was a barrier. And then um, there was very little industry involved. And obviously, it's industry that has to carry the ball forward into clinical
Yeah,
trial. So, what we did is we did a series of things. One, we only fund multidisciplinary, often cross sectoral meaning academics
Right.
and industry working together. And that multidisciplinary, cross-sectoral approach has been remarkably successful. Up until last year, we had funded 59 consortia,
Wow.
and 60% of them have led to drug discovery programs on the part of biotech or pharma.
Yeah.
7 have led to clinical trials, and 5 new biotech companies have been formed out of the research done on those 59 consortia.
Yeah.
The other thing we do is we provide those core tools and resources to anyone in the world for free. And
Okay.
those have been used on 1,100 projects globally,
Wow.
and has really had a role in advancing the field.
Yeah.
Third thing is we focus very intensively on bringing industry into the field.
Yeah.
And we do that by hiring people from industry. We do that by they're 50% of our board. They're 50% of our independent review committee, which is which makes all of our funding decisions.
Yeah.
And so when we first started, we have an annual meeting every year. When our first annual meeting, there were 8 companies that showed up. At last year's annual meeting, there were 138.
Huh. That's
So
awesome.
the industry interest
Yeah.
picked up rather dramatically.
Yeah.
We also partner with other diseases, the other neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's,
Yeah.
frontotemporal degeneration, which is what Bruce Willis was just
Right.
diagnosed with,
Yeah.
because there's a lot of overlap between these different neurodegenerative diseases in terms of genetics, in
Right.
terms of biology, in terms of new treatment methods. And the FDA is actually more open to approving drugs or for ALS because people don't live that long.
Right.
And so what we found is ALS can be the tip of the spear for other neurodegenerative diseases
Okay.
as well. So that's what we do. And when I was diagnosed in 2021, October of 2021, I decided I was going to dedicate my life to scaling up Target ALS,
Yeah.
getting more funding from Congress, and that's what I've been doing. I launched a $250 million campaign.
Yeah.
I'm almost there.
Huh.
And so, I think the future is bright. It's not going to happen for every patient
Right.
for a while,
Yeah.
but I think the field is moving in the right direction. There's so much collaboration,
Yeah.
academics, industry, ALS nonprofits, other nonprofits of related diseases.
Yeah.
And I have to say, the federal government, the NIH, National Institute of Health, and the FDA are moving with impressive speed. So we're all working together, and I'm convinced that, within a reasonable period of time, everyone can live with this disease. I think when we look out 10 years, we'll be able to foresee a day when everyone can live with this disease.
That's excellent to know. I think I look at your background and you you tackle big problems. You've set yourself up to tackle these giant problems all along. And so it seems like that's been pivotal to your ability to take Target ALS to where it is today.
Yeah, I think I've trained for this, and throughout the course of my career.
Yeah,
And as we talked about at the beginning, I didn't know where the motivation came from,
right.
but I've tried to tackle big problems,
Yeah,
like bringing the Olympics to New York, which it
yeah,
didn't happen. But then I went into city government after 9/11, and we brought New York back into a better place, because we worked together, a team of public sector employees and private sector worked together to really capitalize on the feeling in New York that we wanted to make New York greater than ever.
so there's a couple of things that I'm hearing that every innovator needs to, I think, knows that they need in a project. And it's just the purpose behind the innovation being just so solid and meaningful. Whatever it is, it's going to correct or fix or solve a big problem. But you've mentioned a number of times the collaboration. Just if we get insular in innovation, you lose line of sight of outside. So what are those sort of secrets that you use like that have helped you in all of these cases?
Well,
It can't be
yeah,
easy.
what?
Can't be easy.
No, it's not. You're throwing yourself at um, these huge obstacles.
Yeah,
But I would say if you're optimistic, you have to be optimistic.
yeah,
I have to believe that things can be done.
yeah,
Um, you have to be, I think, a pretty good listener because, the ideas don't necessarily come from you. You have to take people's ideas and turn them into reality. And then, as you said, collaboration, getting people to work together. When I was in government, and this was under Mike Bloomberg,
yeah,
he set up government to reduce what I call bureaucratic friction.
right.
So I had under me all the agencies and departments that I needed to get things done.
Yeah,
And that just reduced the bureaucratic friction.
Right.
And so I was able to make the decisions to move things forward without involving a lot of the rest of government. Obviously,
Yeah.
there were other people involved, but when you set things up right, you have a big step forward.
Right.
And I'm very appreciative of Mike Bloomberg's setting up government right to get things done.
Yeah. And is there a particular challenge that you faced that you didn't think you were going to blow through because it was just looking insurmountable, but you made it through?
Well, the big one, the most difficult one, was rebuilding the World Trade Center
Oh my
site.
God, I bet.
There were so many parties involved. We at the city did not have the authority to move it forward.
Right.
The state of New York had much more authority than we did, but we bided our time. We waited till there was a crisis and we had leverage, and we did our homework, and we proved to people that the current approach was not going to work.
Right.
And we sold a different approach, which moved the thing forward. That was probably the most difficult thing
Yeah.
that I ever was involved in, because
Yeah.
there was so many people who had so many different opinions, and the families of the victims
Sure.
uh, had their own views about what should happen.
Yeah.
So we ultimately that's the ultimate example of collaboration,
Yeah.
but it occurred through real difficulty.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, so speaking of difficulties and going back to ALS, and I am the first person to say I never thought about accessibility until I had to think about accessibility.
Right.
Why is accessibility not accessible? I mean, from the bathrooms to the, airports to planes to, it's just nearly impossible.
Yeah, I think we've gotten a lot better over
Yeah.
time. ALS is such a tough disease,
Yeah.
because you're losing your muscle capacity all the time.
Right.
And there's no fixed status that you have. You're just getting worse all the time. But I think we've gotten better. I went out this morning. I'm using an electric wheelchair.
Yeah.
And I went out to breakfast, and I rolled down the street
Yep.
about half a mile. Every sidewalk had curb cuts,
Oh, that's
uh,
true.
so I was able to do it. I got to the Trump Hotel,
Yeah.
where going for breakfast, and they had a little elevator to get you up instead of using stairs.
No.
And it didn't work.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
I had to
no.
go through the garage.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh,
but I'd say overall people are more and more focused on
Yeah,
accessibility. A huge percentage of Americans have disabilities.
yeah,
Um, we need much more accessibility than we have, but we're making some progress.
yeah. I will tell you, because we both talked about all-terrain wheelchairs. I did take my electric wheelchair with my family over the holidays, and we hiked up a mountain in my chair, 3 miles up and back. And so it can do some pretty cool things.
All right, these electric wheelchairs, which fold up, they don't weigh that much. They can power up hills,
Yeah,
and we did. It's very liberating.
yeah,
Um, I can't walk more
yeah,
than, you know, with walking sticks, more than, like 100 feet.
yeah.
So, and I live, by the way, right across the street from Central Park. And I couldn't go into the park
Yeah,
like a year, and now I can.
yeah, that's
So,
awesome.
um,
So,
one of the things that I've learned through all of this is you got to get ahead
yeah,
of things. You don't want to be a hero.
right.
Uh, you, um, when you sense a problem is coming, you want to get ahead of it.
Yeah.
And you don't let your ego get in the way.
And I think we're learning that as I go through this.
It's a
And
hard thing to learn for people who are very self-reliant.
yeah, it is hard. I mean, to be so independent your whole life, and
Right,
now being so dependent.
right,
And my caregivers, my family, what it takes a toll on them, but they're just doing everything they can to be supportive.
yeah.
But it
I
takes a
met
toll on
with
them.
your daughter and son-in-law a couple weeks ago, and I admire them so much. They care about you
Yeah.
so deeply. I was just so touched.
They've been great. It's been wonderful to have them here.
Yeah,
Big help for my husband.
yeah,
My um, my progression has been a little faster than we'd hoped. So I'm 5 months into it. Um, but I think I wanted to talk about the misconceptions, or not, maybe just not understanding ALS, because I talk to people and they're so curious, as I was. I didn't know that much about it. I only knew the ice bucket challenge.
right,
That's what I knew of it.
exactly. So I just to describe ALS, there's special cells called motor neuron in your brain and spinal cord. And what they do is they send signals to the muscles to move. And for a variety of reasons, both genetic and biological, those motor neurons die. And when they die, they can't send signals to the muscles to move.
Mm,
And so the ALS patient gets increasingly paralyzed.
right.
The way you typically die is you can't breathe
Yeah.
because the muscles that help you breathe, including the diaphragm, which is about 80%, get affected as well. And, we're trying really hard to come up with solutions. And as we talked about before, I have no doubt that we will. In fact, for the first time symptoms have been reversed in patients. Those are for pretty rare genetic forms of the disease.
Yeah.
But we're learning from those, and we're on the right path. But it's a tough disease.
Yeah. And I think it, I find it, I have a lot of gratitude for so many of my friends and family that have come out to try to understand it. And we're trying to understand it at the same time. So it's kind of like we're all learning together. But it is shocking when you saw someone hiking 13 miles just a few months ago, and then, oh, they're in a wheelchair.
It was, my case was bizarre. In like August of 2021, I went on a long bike trip,
Yeah,
bike 50 miles a day, for a week. And I was fine.
yeah.
2 weeks later, I go to Iceland and I hike up a mountain and I couldn't breathe.
Oh, wow.
The next day, I followed a kayak and it felt like I was suffocating
Uh,
getting back into the kayak. And I said, "What is this?" So I went to a doctor when I got back, and he noticed my muscles twitching, and he brought in the head neurology, and he declared I probably had ALS.
Oh, wow.
And about a month before, I was riding a bike and totally normal.
Yeah, yeah. So
You
it can
never,
be.
you never
Oh,
know.
I think one other thing that's surprising is that we keep hearing it's a rare disease. Yet everybody I talk to knows somebody that has ALS or had it.
It's not that rare. As I said, 1 in 400 people
Right.
will have ALS, and more men than women,
Yeah.
dramatically. Um, Veterans are twice as likely to get ALS, which we don't completely understand. Um, I think as we gather more data,
Yeah.
um, we'll be able to use AI and machine
Yeah.
learning to understand the causes better. And that's a big part of what we're working on with the NIH, to bring together lots of data sets and create new ones, which we'll be able to use to understand the causes of ALS much
Yeah.
better.
That's
So,
good to hear.
yeah.
So looking in your crystal ball at 2024, what are the Dan predictions for the world?
Well, um, I think inflation is going to keep coming down.
Okay.
The stock market will be going up, but not as fast as last year. Um, the election is going to be close. Um, it's going to be fascinating, what happens with the Trump trials,
Yeah.
particularly the one in Washington.
Yeah.
And that seems to be accelerating. Um, I think if he gets convicted, Biden will win.
Yeah.
Um, but if not, it's a real toss up. Um, we'll see what happens in the Ukraine and Russia. There's been some talk of a ceasefire, which makes sense because it's essentially a stalemate.
Yeah,
I don't know what's going to happen with Israel
yeah,
and Hamas. I don't completely understand how much progress Israel's made
yeah,
in destroying Hamas. So it's going to be a fascinating year with lots of uncertainty.
yeah.
And the thing is, predictions are mostly wrong.
I know.
I don't know what's really
And
happening.
we understand that.
But the one thing I do know is that we will continue to make a lot of progress on ALS.
Yeah, I agree.
That's
I
something
believe you.
absolute confidence in.
So that brings me to how can people support you? There is a donation. I'll make sure we have all the links. But there's
Yeah,
donations on your website. You are a nonprofit or
yeah.
yeah,
A 501c3,
yeah,
a Target ALS.
yeah,
You can look on the website, targetals.org.
yeah,
And, you know, the reality is the more money you have, more resources, more people who enter the field,
yeah,
more technology we have, the better understanding we will have of the disease. And as we bring in biotech and pharma to carry the ball forward, we will generate lots of progress. So it's all about resources.
yeah,
And that's why, I set this weird goal of raising 250 million, but I'm not going to stop.
yeah.
I'm going to keep raising it as long as I live.
Mm.
And, and we'll just keep pushing
That's
after I'm gone.
that's your that's yours. You just keep pushing.
Yeah, you know what
Likewise,
I,
2024.
yeah, what I've learned being diagnosed like this, and I've talked a little bit about it. There's only two things that matter in life. One is relationships, and you see how the relationships that you've built over your lifetime help you through uh, bad diagnosis like we have.
Yeah,
And the other one is having a purpose in your life, whatever it is, but it has to matter to you, and I think matter to people more broadly, and that's all that matters.
yeah.
And that that's what I've learned.
Dan, I think you are an amazing individual and you've contributed so much. And you can tell you had a purpose all through your career. I mean, and I can still hear your passion for news from your Bloomberg days. So I love the predictions. Um, I appreciate you being with us today and sharing all this.
Well, Teresa, we said, we're in this together,
Yeah,
and anything I can do for you or your family, count me in.
I really appreciate
Uh,
that. And I
we're
hope we can bring resources to help others navigate through the just incredible maze that you have to go through to get there.
it's yeah, exactly.
Well,
So, but
thank
I'm
you.
so appreciative of you.
Thank you very much.